Hey y'all, welcome to First Comes Love, Then Comes Marriage podcast. My name is Lindsey Jackson.
And I'm Aaron Jackson.
And I'm really excited because this is our final episode of season 6, episode 22. We made it.
Yeah, we did.
We did it.
Mhm.
We did it again. 6 seasons. I'm always so excited for this episode because it's like this very big, wonderful feeling of accomplishing something that we set out in the beginning of the season and we complete it. And it is no small feat. It's never any small feat. Even when we season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now 6, every time we do it, there are obstacles that come about in the middle, throughout, I should say. And we're always like, I say to myself, we can do 12 episodes. Other shows do it, other seasons do it. We can do 10. We can just stop right here at 17. And I'm like, no, the goal was 22. Like, we do 22 episodes every season. That's our goal. And we did it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
We did
We
it.
had some ups and downs.
We had
some
babysitters
smiles
quit,
and frowns. Yeah.
some obstacle, microphone collapsing and ring lights and children everywhere, late nights, early morning sound. So many issues, if you will.
So what's the season about, Mom?
But I have to say it because here's the thing. I like to encourage myself. I really do. I can't just keep pressing forward without acknowledging these small wins. Every small win builds into something really special. And this season was and is about love letters to our children.
Mm-hmm.
And Aaron thought about this. This was your creativity in your head. You said we're always talking to our parents about things that are going on in our lives right now. And they are our elders. They are removed from this situation by at least 30 years. So they can listen and they can understand and pray and empathize with us, but they're not giving real-time advice because they're not in this situation anymore.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that. I sometimes think about that with my older sister. We are 9 years apart, and it seems like we're 20 years apart because wherever she is, I'm not there yet. And then by the time I get there, she's already somewhere else, whereas in high school or children, marriage, things like that. So she never had real-time advice for me. I always felt like I'm, the baby sister. And so again, with parenting, it's the same thing. So we came up with this idea where we are talking to our adult children right now, in the thick of it, in the thick of what's happening to us right now, even though they are currently 6, 4, and 1.
Mm-hmm.
So that is Love Letters to Our Children. I'm really happy with this season. And so here we are. Last episode. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Episode 22. This episode is our faith episode. And thank you, Sasha, God mommy to our children. I said, what should we talk about? Because sometimes, we have a lot to say, but we got to hone in one specific topic. And this is throughout. I feel like this is an overarching theme because we do talk about our faith a lot. We talk about God in every episode. We talk about scriptures and church and things like that. But really, the conversation is, how did we find God for ourselves? How do we know God for ourselves, other than the fact that we were raised in the church? So if this is your first episode with us, long story very short, we met in the church. Aaron and I have known each other since 3rd grade, Faithful Central Bible Church, which was then Faithful Central Baptist Church, led by Bishop Kenneth C. Omer. This is our foundation and our upbringing. And so we were raised in the church, but now at 38, for me, 37.
What are you, 38 now? I'm 38.
Okay. That's because we didn't do a birthday episode.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm 38. Keep going. Keep going.
So how did we find God for ourselves now that we are grown? We can live our own lives. We don't have to go to church. We don't have to know God. We don't have to pray. We don't have to teach the things that we were taught. We're adults now, and we choose to live this life. We actually just came from church today. We choose to teach it to our children. So, how you want to start, babe? Like, how did you become? How is your faith, and how did you develop it?
Okay. What I'll start with. So, 2 weeks ago, there was like a leadership meeting at my job, and we had to take this test. It was this test where some might be like one word might change the answer. Like, do you like basketball or watching basketball or something like that?
Mm,
It's like, and if you don't answer within the allotted time, it was like 30 seconds, then a non-answer also was an answer,
okay.
and so you get timed out. Anyways, and at the end, it comes out with like these different types of like attributes that you have. Mine's was the type of leadership that you have. Mine's was belief. Mine's was also individualization. That was another one of mine's. A relator. These are like my strengths when it comes to leadership.
Okay.
And I was talking to the VP of New York district, and she came up to me and they called me Rich at work, and she was like, Rich, in all of the meetings I've been through, you are the only person that had belief as your number one.
Mm,
She was like, this is the first time I've seen it. So she was like, it was really rare. And the belief one, I'm going somewhere with this. So
I'm
the
following
belief
you.
one underneath it, uh, it was just like having a core set of values that dictate your actions. And so when you have a belief in something, you always fall back to that thing, and it helps your decisions because the decisions are based off of this core thing that you have in your head, this belief. And I think that translated through is it translates throughout the way that I am living my life.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you were like in your intro, you were like, I we don't have to do this, we don't have to do that, we don't have to do that. As soon as you started saying that, in my head, I was like, no, I have to do this.
Mm,
Um, the same way that I need to eat every day, that we should go to the bathroom every day, that we need to drink water. It's the same way I need to be a light and an example and show myself as a man of God every day. Like I have to do it because to me, I grew up off of my dad's faith, but I feel like the relationship that my dad had is like the relationship that my dad had with God is a different relationship that I have with God.
mm-hmm.
But I do know this about both gods because they're the same God. They have never broken a promise, and they have always delivered and provided for the family. And so my dad used to tell me these stories about like when he was younger, he was in college and how he was wilding out and selling drugs. And my dad comes from a two-parent household. Mom has a doctorate. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was upper middle class back when upper middle class was balling,
Right.
type of situation. And we were middle class because he ended up getting a job in the state, no, in the city, getting a city job as an electrician and providing for his family and stuff like that. But when he was younger, he was wilding and he had to find God. And all these things that he didn't really think about, God end up providing a way for. And now that I am an adult and I have my own children and my own wife, it is the only way I know that works. And so that was the example that was set by my parents, that I'm like, if I know that this works, why do something else?
Mm.
um and there is a point where we had a little bit, we were talking about pregnancy, we talked about Jack. uh there was a point where the bubble burst, basically. Like I was 30, just turned 29, 30, and I was living in this almost it was I was naive, but I was also like almost arrogant, like I deserve or I control my own destiny, which popped. And I really had to come to terms with the fact that I give myself away. Like
Ooh, you better sing.
if I give myself away to God, if I'm saying like I am your vessel, if I'm saying these things, if I'm singing it on Sundays,
Mm-hmm.
uh what is that in action?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's a challenge, but also it's more so freeing, knowing that it's a freeing sense for me, but it's also challenging because sometimes I do want to have control. But the just going back to always knowing that the person who is actually in control is better at it.
Right.
At my job, I try to put people in the positions where they're like they were talking about beliefs. What are your strengths? How do we do these strengths? I got somebody who is in charge of my life who is better at life because they created life.
It's like the picture, the visual of like God knows the ending or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the ending of this life is,
Yes.
because not eternity. And it's like, why doesn't he tell you? I think you told me this story. It's like, God doesn't tell you how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
Because if he told you how you're going to get there, you wouldn't go.
Yes.
Right? It's like, I wouldn't go through all of I mean, maybe you would or maybe you wouldn't, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like, why would I want to go through all these things if, you're going to tell me that I'm going to plummet and then I'm going to, so he doesn't say
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I'm not going to tell you the journey. I could tell you
Right.
the ending. I could be like, oh yeah, you're gonna have this. You're gonna have wonderful kids, and but if they're like, oh, you have to go through this. You gotta go through this. You
Mm-hmm.
gotta go through this. And the only thing is to be like, but it's worth it. Me at that time might be like, I don't think it's worth it. I
Right.
mean, I do not like being uncomfortable, and so when I am in comfortability, uh, and seeing, to me, it's always been easier to do the right thing. But then as I got older, it evolved from doing the right thing because I see it, and also now I do the right thing because I know the reason why behind I'm doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it wasn't like that when I was a teenager. But now that I'm older, it's like, oh, why do you follow Christ? Why do you do this? There's a reason why. I'm not just doing it because my mom and dad told me to do it. I'm doing it because I know that's a proven reason. I know that uh, he is the Alpha and Omega. He knows all things. He is all powerful. He is all knowing. And also, I have his favor, and he knows what's best for me. And that is probably the biggest one, that God knows what's best for me, even if I don't. And me having that understanding is a way that leads into my, I guess, faith walk as an adult.
Same thing as far as my upbringing. I grew up in a two-parent household and I was raised in the church. So the foundation of church was already planted in me, as we said from the beginning. And I remember, I feel like, I don't know if all kids, but most kids, they look up to their parents. And I looked up to my parents going to church. This was our life. We went to school, we did things on Saturdays, we went to church on Sundays. And I remember when I started not going to Sunday school and started following them inside what we used to call big church. And I stopped going to youth
At
church.
7.
And, right, exactly. I loved, because I guess I don't know, I could comprehend things and I could understand what Bishop was talking about. And I was like, I want to be here. I don't need it dumbed down for me. I want to hear this lesson. And I would take notes. And I remember watching my dad, and I felt like he went to church because he loved my mom. And he did not grow up, or I don't know, he didn't grow up with his father. He grew up with a mother and a father figure sometimes, but church was not a big part of his life, I believe, before he met my mom. I don't know though. But what I remember is my dad going to church and sitting there and having a different type of relationship with God. He was not one to sing. My mom sang soprano so loudly. And he was not one to cry. He was not one to emote at church, as you know, Black churches do. They have people, running around
Mm-hmm.
and shouting, and he didn't do that. And his relationship with God was his relationship with God. And I remember sometime in my teenage years understanding, and Bishop might have spoke about this, but it was about your relationship. My mom had a relationship, my dad had a relationship, and they both had a relationship, and that transpired into, I need to have my relationship with God. I need to have my own study time with God, with the Bible, in his word, with my journaling, with all the things. And so I think that just carried me forward into adulthood. Like when I think back about my relationship with God, we had a similar season of when our faith was absolutely tested in that trauma experience. And it was today in church, our pastor was talking about it, and he was saying like, you know God, it's really crazy, but there the song was, God's never failed, he's never failed. And I always go back to that one moment in the hospital where, and we spoke about this before, but
Mm-hmm.
where, there's a moment where I'm on this gurney and my placenta's not coming out, and they're like, okay, you need to sign this, you need to just in case we got to take your whole uterus, we need to
Yeah, you
make sure
can't have
you're
any more
okay,
babies.
you can't have any
Mm-hmm.
more babies. And it was this really time crunch type of situation where it's very dramatic for me. I just lost my firstborn. Everything is happening. And my husband's here, my mom's here. We don't know what's going on. For me, I'm drugged up. And I remember saying, God has never failed. And I remember in church today thinking to myself, how did I know that to be true when technically I would have said, God just failed me now by taking my first child? What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean he's never failed? But I say this story in a synopsis to say that my relationship with God was that strong. I had already had a relationship with him. I had already known him to be good, regardless of if this one situation didn't turn out the way that I so perfectly pictured it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was and still am a planner. Everything is planned out. And I'm like, well, this did not happen according to my plan. But I know God. I know God is good. I know God loves me. I know God. So, going to church and that whole raise up a child and he will not depart from it scripture, and spare the rod, spoil the child. Like my parents did all of those things for me. So we did have this foundation. I did have this foundation. But after you leave the house at 18, what keeps you close to God? Right? What
Mm-hmm.
keeps you there? And Pastor today was talking about this gradual drifting away that happens, which happens, right? You go off to school and you don't have the same friends. And most of your friends don't go to church anymore. They don't know God. Nobody talks about God. Everybody's having sex. Everybody's drinking. People, it's a gradual shift. And then it's like,
3 years later.
3 years later, and you're like, okay, then you graduate. And then you got to make new friends, or you keep some of your old friends. They kind of know you. How do you stay connected with God? Why do you want to stay connected with God? Because that was something that you did when you were a kid, when you were in your parents' house. Why? Because for me, I know God to be good. And he grounded me. God kept my sanity. I think that there are so many things in the world, especially like coming from LA to New York and Philly and just different places where, as a young adult in my 20s, it's like, I don't know where I fit in or what's going on. I know God. And I think that for me, that was the thing that kept me connected to him. It was like, I don't know a lot of things. There's sometimes my friends fell off and I did a lot of things wrong, and I'm this and I'm that, and my boyfriend, we broke up sometimes, and he, all so much is going on. What I know God. And so for me, that is definitely how I kept my faith. in God. I kept my relationship with God. I grew in God. He grew in me, that sort of thing. Because at a certain point, when you are away from your parents and you are all grown up, you have to make a decision. And it can be, I was going to say, it can't be half-hearted. It can be if that's what you want it to be, or it can be fully immersed in what you want. And that's how we are right now. We are fully immersed in God. God is fully immersed in our lives. We allow him to take control. He leads our lives. He leads our marriage. He leads our parenting. He leads this household. And it's so wild when I think about it, because a couple of years ago, we started going back to church. You
Yeah.
know, I have a job where I work on Sundays, and I have had this job for most of my adult life. And
All of your adult life. What do you mean?
you're right. And so you have been married to me. I don't know, all of my adult life. I've been an adult since I've been in my 20s, and I've only, okay, right. You're right, cuz 26 I have had this job. And since then, we have been together. And so it has been a struggle to go to church. And we're like, we'll go to church sometimes. You know, we don't, we would go to
Yeah.
church.
The same thing with my job. Haven't had a job
Yep.
for, this is the first time that I've had a job that, yes, we work on weekends. It is few and far between.
Right. Very rare.
Yeah. I mean, now this season has been less rare than, but yeah,
But
it's
but
not
most of
like,
the time, not Sunday.
yeah,
Even if
both,
it's
yeah,
Saturday, it's
yeah,
very rare that it's Sunday.
yeah.
And so, but a couple of years ago, you said our children are coming to a certain age, specifically Action, because he's our eldest. And you were like, we need to go to church.
So, and I was gonna, so this is another thing I thought about when I was listening to you talk, and the, like, our letters to our children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how do you still have faith? One of the similarities between our stories is that our parents, one, they introduced us to church at an early age. We had this introduction. And also, our parents did not change who they were on Sunday than they were on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Our parents were the same people. There are some people at church who see their parents differently. They're like, wow, when you're at church, you act like this. And then
We've
on this,
seen it.
yeah.
We have seen, and it's not,
And
it's drastic.
yeah, but it's not.
Everybody's human, but it is a drastic difference in where
Exactly.
they put on their church hat and their this and that,
Mm-hmm.
and they go to church, and then any other day of the week.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about us, that we've always been the same. And our parents have been the same. Your dad, your mom act the same as if they were going to church.
Mhm.
We act the same. My mom, my dad act the same way. You will not be surprised. You would know them from church. There's something about somebody who is walking in authentic. One of the things that we have always been, one of the reasons why I love our Instagram, is at First Comes Love TCM on Instagram, is that people will watch and think that it's a show at first. And then they get to know us and they're like, wait a minute, this is authentic.
This
Like,
is you. And
they,
people have
yeah,
told me, they're like, if I didn't know you, I would not think this is true.
yeah,
I would not think this is real, because it just seems like, how can this be?
yeah, you guys are putting on. You have to be
You
putting
have
on.
to be put. You can't be walking
Your
down the
kids,
streets like this.
can't be happy.
No.
Your kids can't be singing Jesus Loves Me in a stroller just because randomly, when we didn't even teach her that song.
I don't even know. Yeah, she must have heard us
Like,
singing it.
these boys can't, like, you're letting your boys walk around with Superman capes on when it's not even Halloween. It's like, yeah, we got the joy down in our heart. Where? And so,
Where you love to sing.
but that's the thing, is like the introduction. We are giving. Have you met Ted? That's from How I Met Your Mother. But it's kind of like, when there's a relationship, and we're talking about relationships. How are we continue our relationship with Christ? how did I you have to have an introduction. How do you meet your friends? You have to have an introduction. What's that initial introduction? So our parents introduced us to our now relationship with Christ. And that's the same thing that we're doing. We're going to introduce you, and then you're going to see our relationship. My relationship with God is different from Lindsay's relationship with God, but I know that we serve the same God. My relationship with Action is going to be a different relationship with Lindsay and Action, but we are both his parents. He's going to have different relationships, but it's going to be the same person. Um, and when they see our relationship and they see that it's good and they see that it guides our uh, thoughts and moves and decisions, I feel like when they get to that age where they're making that choice, they're like, okay, they know a system that works. They might try they might particles, what's it called?
Prodigal son.
Prodigal son it or something like that. But at least they have an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons uh, I talk about my grandmother a lot and my grandfather, they were the ones like that introduced travel to me. They were the ones that introduced musical theater to me. Uh, and so, and I've seen, so like when, when I got older, it was already in my field. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's why I feel like one, it's important to know God, have Christ, and we're not forcing it onto our children. But yeah, you are going to go to church. You are going to go to children's church. One of the reasons I loved Renaissance is because they have an active children's church.
Which is
Uh,
so hard to find in New York. And I again, in my head, when I thought about raising a family, because I knew I always wanted a family, I was like, oh, I'm getting married. I love this man. And Aaron is a good, I know, look, our kids are listening. Aaron is a good man. We're going to have beautiful children. And in my head, we were going to be raising our children in Los Angeles at the same church. I mean, I was very young. I didn't think anything would change. I didn't think Bishop would retire. I mean, it was just all
oh
going to
yeah,
be the same because I loved the church in that way. And so now here we are still in New York trying to figure out how to do this, how to do this life, um, raising our children in a way that we know that is also, when you said beliefs, it's also like morality, all these things, because New York City is such a place where it's so fast and it's crazy and it's dangerous. And it's like, how do we protect them? How do we protect them from so many things? And church did that for me as well. There's peer pressure when you're kids. You know, there's a lot of things going on that I pray over our children all the time. And church helped me with a lot of the things that kids have to go through. And so yeah, when you said, "Oh, it's time to start finding a children's church," it was difficult.
yeah,
We stopped really going to church because it was already difficult to find a church just for us as adults,
uh-huh.
and not to be like we have all these requirements, but it was like, well, what is the choir? How does the choir sing? And what time of day? Because we have to go to work. And what about the word, the sermon? How is the sermon given? The pastor, the community within the church, all of these things make up, the church. And we did not find one for us until Renaissance because
Yeah,
we had a church, but it was location wise an hour and a half away. Well, that's unrealistic for us to get to every Sunday.
yeah,
And just all of the things and all the factors. And I keep going back to church because church keeps us anchored to something. Our relationship with God is individualized and it's us being in our word, us doing our prayer time. But church also brings you back. It keeps you there. It keeps you anchored to something. And I'm really glad that we found Renaissance for us and for our kids. Going back to the question is like, how did we find God for ourselves? And I think that it's through like test and through trials and
uh-huh.
through life, which is sad to say because I know my relationship grew immensely after going through some things, you know, like you said, you were kind of dependent on yourself. You were like, okay, you know, life's good, or the bubble that was there, the naivety that was there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm planning, I'm orchestrating, I'm working hard, I'm a good person, and I'm doing this, I'm doing my life.
Yeah, I'm doing good things.
Right. And so, but also God is like, okay, but also me. So anyways, I was just thinking about that because I do want, like how you said, I do want our children to know God for themselves. I do pray that for them. And I know that the world is changing all the time. We didn't have the same things that they have already right now, and they're yet to hit grade school. So the two, you know, and it's
Yeah.
just like, I know even filling out the forms for them in the doctor's office, the different genders, just so many
Yeah.
different things. And I know the base of how we operate is love, which is why we are, you know, we're this love podcast and everything. So operating that way, but then also staying connected to God. So
I thought God is love.
God is love. But I'm just saying there's a lot going on out there, and I was just thinking about it today because of yesterday and us going to the Pride Festival and just
Yeah.
different things like that that are out there.
Yeah, like I remember we did not celebrate Halloween.
Right.
Like that was we did not celebrate. We didn't do nothing for Halloween, let alone like dress up or
Well,
anything like
everything
that.
was so taboo back then, and now it's like, okay, you can do a little bit of this, but you gotta, and
And see,
again,
and this is, and you know what? Since we're talking about that, this is where relationship comes to play,
right,
right? Back in the day, I feel like when we were younger, it was more so about don't do this because we don't do this, and not finding the reason why, and do this because this is what we do, and not having a why behind it. It was a story about this lady. She was cooking this recipe, and she always cut off like this piece of the meatloaf or whatever, and that's how like her grandmother taught her to cut off this piece of the chicken and then put it in the pot, and then they'll bake it. And then she got older, she was teaching her daughter how to do it. And the daughter's like, "Why do we cut this piece off?" And she was like, "Well, your grandmother told me." So the daughter asked the grandmother, "Why do we cut off this piece when we cook this chicken? Like, is it the bad piece?" And the grandmother was like, "My pot, my roasting pot was not big enough for this piece, so I cut it off."
mm-hmm.
But the daughter was the mom at the time, just thought that's what she was supposed to do.
And she had a bigger pot, so she
Yeah,
could have kept it on.
she could have
Yeah,
kept it on. And
mm-hmm.
so it's like stuff like that. It's like, yes, why sometimes it's like, why do we do things? Uh and just doing it for the sake of I'm I we don't go to church. We didn't find the children's church just because we thought that that's what we do because that's how we raised.
Right.
We went to go find a children's church, and find a church is because we knew that we needed that foundation. We needed that type of community of
Mm-hmm.
like-minded people
we
around
we
us to
wanted
help
the
us grow.
village, we
Yeah.
wanted, yes, yes,
And so those are two different things. And so I do feel like when you're doing something, or if like Action Trying to Live, when they're adults and they're doing it for the sake of, oh, it's always been like that, it can fall off as soon as something gets rocky. As soon as like you have a job that you can't schedule, they're like, well, we need you to work on Sundays. So now
yep,
it starts falling off. Or you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend that doesn't go to church, and they're like, oh, well, I know God, but you know, I don't really go to church on that. Let's brunch it out on Sundays. And like, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, well,
yeah,
just because. But no, if you know the reasons why and you see the importance of it, that's when you start doing things. And I feel like that's why we did it. Um, so
that's good.
yeah.
I totally agree with you.
Also, it really helps with marriage since we're like since I'm talking to Action Shine and Live. Having somebody that has that serves the same person that you serve is really beneficial. When it
And that's
comes,
the real thing.
yeah,
I do not know, and this is like how you say, like it worked for him. I don't know how people do life, marriage, and parenting without God, because it's such a selfish place to be in this world, to not have God, like you said, to not know God, serve God, love God. Then you are for yourself. And if you're for yourself, how are you going to be in a marriage? It just, I don't know. I don't, but again, I don't know a lot of married people that are
Because they're
not.
not married no more.
I would love, I mean, I'm sure, obviously, this is not to disrespect other religions at all. This is just to talk about our understanding of life. And so, yeah, that it definitely, I agree, it definitely helps. And I was listening to this woman who said she had been married for 60 years, married for 60 years, over 60 years. And she was, the top three things was communicate, forgive, and pray.
Not consummate.
No. It was, I mean, and other people will say different things, and obviously relationships are very personal, same thing that we've been talking about. But really, prayer together, prayer with your spouse, prayer is going to keep you connected. Because even when, and I say when and not if, because when you get angry, when you disagree, when things don't work out,
when you don't call somebody for the whole
for
week
the
and you're
whole
working,
day, and when your finances are tight, and when this, and when death, and when that, and when things hit, and you all pray together, it changes something. And that's really important, because I don't know another factor that would change something. I don't know let me take you out on a date that's going to break that, that's going to help uplift anything. And, or a gift, here's a diamond, or I don't know it, but I know prayer works.
I always think of like cartoons or like Charlie Chaplin, when like those big fans and everything's blowing away. And then finally somebody grabs on into a pole or something in a hurricane, and they're like diagonal.
Yes.
Yeah, but they're not flying away. They're holding on. You have to hold on to something.
Yes.
In order not to get blown away. And that's what my relationship is with God. It's something that I hold on to, that I, especially when I'm falling or getting blown away or swept away. And I want that for my children, but also I want it for them, but they have to discover it on their own. Because if I force it on them, it's not going to be authentic.
Yeah, man.
Good season.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. I hope that and we live and we learn. So there's so much more. But this was our 6th season, 22 episodes, love letters to our children. And I just want to thank everybody for listening, for commenting, for corresponding, for giving us insights and sharing, liking, all the things, subscribing, really talking to us this season. Because as personal as it was for us, like, we changed it up, we're on the couch, we're talking to each other, we're talking to you, it also was very growing for us. I also think,
speak for yourself,
it was growing for us. It was growing for us because we share a little bit about us, and we it's so funny, we only had one guest. Thank you so much. We only had one guest this season, but they were also very pivotal to what this season, and I say season as in the podcast season, but just like season in our life as well, what we're talking about, what we're going through. And so I know for us, we're going to look back and say, like, okay, that's where we were in our lives.
Yeah.
This is important. And so that's what
I got one more thing, and I know I'm going to kill myself because I edit these podcasts. I have one more question for you. Since we are talking to our children as they get older, do you want to say anything to yourself? Maybe right now you're 38. Do you want to say something to a 68-year-old Lindsey?
I know, man. I saw this thing that was like, you ask yourself these questions at the top of the year, and then at the end of the year, you're like, did you ever get that house? And you look different.
Yeah.
And all the things.
Just one or two things that you could talk to 68-year-old Lindsey.
Man, Are you financially stable? Can you travel the world whenever you want to travel the world? These are the goals that I want for myself. Are you in your house? Are you retired? Are you volunteering places just because you want to, not because you have to? Do you have grandkids?
Okay.
It's getting emotional.
68-year-old Aaron. Can you still run? Can you jump? Um, can you still throw a baseball or shoot a hoop? How active are you? And thank you for being 68. You did it. All right.
That was good.
I bet you 68-year-old me was like, this.
Right. He messed it up. That's why I got to do all this right now.
He's like, I wish I could go back and tell him not to do what I told him. All right.
Yikes. We don't know, but God does.
Yep.
So
Cap
look now. As always, tell us what you think.
Mm-hmm.
You can DM us on Instagram, First Comes Love TCM.
You can like, follow, subscribe on the YouTube channel at First Comes Love. Also, tell a friend about the podcast. I know you listen to the podcast. Tell a friend, like, hey, man, I got this nice podcast.
Send it to them just like you send them the memes, just like you send them other podcasts.
Yeah.
Send it to them, like one episode.
Yeah, we could clip up episodes so you guys could just send them out.
Literally, we have playlists, podcasts, send it to them on YouTube, all the things. Also, you can email us. Let's talk at First Comes Love, then comes marriage.com. See you next season.
Oh, season?
What do we say? Yes, this is season.
All right, ready?
Okay.
See you next season.